It's a little after midnight, in the winter of 1812, somewhere in the north of England.
A group of men are walking across a frozen field, toward a factory. Their faces are blackened with soot. Some of them are carrying hammers.
Enormous hammers, forged specially for this, and they've given the hammers a name. They call them Great Enoch.
And they have a saying about them, half joke, half prayer. Enoch made them, and Enoch shall break them.
Inside that factory are machines. New machines. Machines that can do the work of the men outside faster, cheaper, and without complaint. And in a few minutes, those men are going to walk in and reduce every one of them to scrap metal on the floor.
Within 4 years, this will be happening across an entire country. The government will pass a law making it punishable by death. They will deploy more soldiers to stop these men than they had sent to fight Napoleon. And they will hang them in rows.
Here's the part they never teach you. These men were not stupid. They were not afraid of technology. They were, in many cases, the most skilled workers of their generation, and they saw something coming that everyone around them refused to see. 200 years later, that exact same thing is coming for you. Except this time, the machines aren't made of iron.
And almost nobody is preparing for what history says happens next. Let me show you.
There's a word you've probably used as an insult. Luddite. We use it to mean someone who's scared of technology, someone backward, someone who just doesn't get it. That definition is a lie, and it's not an accidental lie, it's a lie that was useful to the people who won. Because here's what actually happened. 2 centuries ago, a wave of new machines arrived that could do human work. The people who owned the machines got staggeringly rich. The people who did the work got poorer for decades. Not weeks. Not months. Generations. And when those workers finally understood that no one was coming to save them, they didn't write a strongly worded letter. They picked up hammers. We are living through the opening act of the same story. Right now. In 2026. The machines are different. They write, they code, they diagnose, they design. But the pattern underneath is almost identical, and it's already moving faster than the first one did. So in the next few minutes I'm going to show you 3 things. 1. What the Luddites actually discovered, and why history buried it. 2. The invisible economic mechanism that made the last automation wave so brutal, and why the exact same mechanism just switched on again this year. And 3. The part nobody in Silicon Valley wants to talk about. What history says people do when this pattern reaches its breaking point. Because it has happened before, and it did not end with a debate. Stay with me, because the third one is already starting. Let's go back. The year is 1811. The place is Nottingham, England. And the men breaking machines are not factory laborers. That's the first thing everyone gets wrong. Many of them are croppers and framework knitters, skilled tradesmen who spent years, sometimes a full 7-year apprenticeship, learning a craft. They were, by the standards of the time, respected. They earned decent money. They had status. And then a machine arrived that could do a rough version of their work in a fraction of the time, using workers who had learned the job in days, not years. Now here's the second thing everyone gets wrong. The Luddites were not angry that the machine existed. Read their actual letters, and they wrote a lot of them, and you'll find something surprisingly modern. They weren't saying machines are evil. They were saying, this machine is being used to destroy the standards of our trade, to flood the market with cheap, shoddy goods, and to cut the people who made this country wealthy out of the wealth entirely. They weren't anti-technology, they were anti-being erased. They needed a symbol, so they invented one. A figure called Ned Ludd. General Ludd, King Ludd, the phantom leader who supposedly lived in Sherwood Forest, in a nod to another local legend about a man who robbed the rich. Ned Ludd never existed. That was the point. You can't arrest a myth. Letters would arrive signed by General Ludd, and no magistrate could trace them, because he was everywhere and nowhere a name any worker could put on. And the movement spread like fire. From Nottingham to Yorkshire to Lancashire. Croppers, weavers, whole towns. At night, in coordinated raids, they went into the mills and destroyed the specific machines that were being used to undercut them, often leaving the other equipment untouched. This wasn't mindless rage. It was targeted. It was disciplined. It terrified the government precisely because it was organized. So how did the most powerful empire on earth respond to some workers with hammers? It panicked. In 1812, Parliament passed the Frame-Breaking Act. Its purpose was simple: to make the destruction of a machine a capital crime, punishable by death. Think about the moral universe that requires a country deciding that breaking a piece of equipment should cost you your life. One of the only voices to stand up in Parliament and argue against it was the poet Lord Byron. In his very first speech to the House of Lords, he essentially asked whether they were really prepared to hang men whose only crime was being made obsolete and desperate. They passed it anyway. And then came the soldiers. At the height of the crisis, the British government had, by several historical accounts, more troops deployed against the Luddites inside England than the Duke of Wellington had under his command fighting Napoleon in Spain at that moment. Let that sit for a second. A nation at war with the most dangerous man in Europe was more frightened of its own workers than of a French invasion. It ended the way these things usually end. In 1813, in the city of York, came the trials. Men were hanged. Others were shipped to the far side of the planet, transported to Australia, never to return. The machine breaking was crushed. The machines stayed. And the story got rewritten by the winners into a single, convenient word: Luddite. Meaning, fool. Meaning, don't be like them. But if the Luddites were fools, you have to explain something. Because for the next 30 years, on the single most important measure of whether all this progress was working, the amount of money an ordinary worker could actually take home, the Luddites turned out to be right. Let me show you the mechanism they saw. Because it just switched back on. Here's the question that breaks most people's assumptions about progress. When a new technology makes a country massively more productive, when the same number of people can suddenly produce 10 times the goods, where does all that extra wealth go? We assume it spreads out. A rising tide lifts all boats, right? More productivity, more prosperity, everybody wins. Economic historians have a name for what actually happened during the early Industrial Revolution. Some call it the Engels Pause. And it is one of the most unsettling facts in modern economics. For roughly the first half-century of industrialization, a period where output per worker was climbing, where Britain was becoming the workshop of the world, where the owners of the new factories were becoming some of the richest people in human history, the wages of the ordinary worker barely moved. For decades, the productivity went vertical. The paycheck went flat. The gains were real. They just didn't go to the people doing the work. They went to the people who owned the machines. That's the mechanism. That's the whole thing. A new technology doesn't automatically make everyone richer. It changes who captures the value, and in the early years, it captures it for the owners, and it takes a very long, very painful stretch of history before ordinary people claw any of it back. The Luddites weren't raging against the future. They were living inside that gap. They could see the wealth being created all around them, and they could feel it flowing past them, and they were told to be patient and grateful. Now, watch how precisely this maps onto right now. In 2026, we are being told a story about a productivity revolution. AI is going to make everything faster, cheaper, more efficient. Trillions of dollars are pouring into it. And on paper, some of that is even true. But look at where the value is going. Look at who is capturing it. This year, the companies building and owning these systems are reaching valuations that are almost hard to type without laughing. We are watching AI-linked companies march towards some of the largest valuations in the history of markets, combinations worth more than the entire economic output of major nations. The owners of the machines are becoming the richest entities that have ever existed. And the workers? Here's the part that should stop you. In 2026, One of the most respected assessments of AI's actual measured effect on productivity came out around 0.5%. Not 500%. Not 50. Around 0.5% so far. Meanwhile, the layoffs get announced in the tens of thousands. Meta, Cisco, software giants cutting whole percentages of their workforce and pointing at AI as the reason. Sit with that contradiction, because it's the Engels Pause in real time. The machines are not yet delivering the miracle productivity the hype promised. But the wealth is already concentrating, and the jobs are already being cut. The gap between what the technology actually does and how it's being used to reshape who gets paid, that gap is exactly where the Luddites lived. And we just walked into it. The Luddites' real crime wasn't hating machines. It was noticing, out loud, that progress and progress for you are not the same sentence. We punished them for noticing. And 200 years later, we're being asked not to notice again. Now, at this point, the optimists have an answer ready, and it's a fair one. They'll say, yes, the Industrial Revolution was painful, but it ended well. Eventually wages rose. Eventually we got the weekend, the middle class, longer lives, cheaper everything. The pain was temporary. The machines won and we won too, just later. So relax. Ride it out. I want that to be true. But there are 3 reasons this time may not follow the comforting half of the script, and the smartest people in the field are quietly worried about all 3. Reason 1, speed. The Engels Pause lasted about 50 years. 50 years is brutal, but it's also 2 full generations. It gave society time. Time for unions to form, for laws to be written, for schools to retrain the next generation into the new economy. The transition was slow enough to survive. The current wave is not measured in generations. It's measured in model releases. The leading systems are being rewritten every few months, each one substantially more capable than the last. The textile machine that broke the croppers took decades to spread across an industry. A new AI capability can spread across the entire connected world in a weekend. We do not have 50 years to adapt. We may not have 5. Reason 2, this time it's coming for the top of the ladder, not the bottom. Every previous automation wave hit physical, repetitive, or lower status work first. The comforting middle-class assumption was always, learn to think, get a degree, work with your mind, and you're safe. Robots take the factory, humans take the office. This wave is the exact opposite. The work most exposed to modern AI is knowledge work, writing, analysis, coding, design, law, translation, customer support. The office is the factory floor now. And the data is already showing it in the cruelest possible place, the bottom rung. Across AI-exposed fields, we're seeing measurable drops in employment for the youngest workers, the 22 to 25-year-olds, the entry-level hires. Companies aren't necessarily firing their seniors. They're quietly not hiring the juniors, because the AI does the juniors' work now. Think about what that does over time. The entry-level job isn't just a paycheck. It's the first rung. It's how you get the experience to become a senior. If you saw off the bottom rungs of a ladder, the ladder doesn't get shorter. It becomes unclimbable. You're creating a generation that can't get on. Reason 3, the wealth concentrates into fewer hands than ever before. Here's a number from this year that I still find hard to believe. In a single week in 2026, one of the largest technology companies on Earth lost around $269 billion of market value. Why? In large part because a handful of its top AI researchers, we're talking about a group you could fit around a dinner table, left for competitors. 6 or so people. $250 billion. That is a world where economic power is concentrating not just into a few companies, but into a few individuals, the tiny number of minds who can build the machines. In the Luddites era, at least the wealth spread across thousands of factory owners. In ours, the leverage is collapsing toward a group small enough to name. When value concentrates that hard, that fast, the gap the Luddites died inside doesn't just reappear. It widens into a canyon. Faster than ever. Aimed at the top of the ladder. Concentrated into fewer hands than any economy in history. Now, put those three together, and ask the question nobody on stage at the tech conferences wants to answer out loud. What do human beings actually do when they feel the wealth of an entire era flowing past them, and they're told to be patient and grateful? History already answered that. And you saw the answer in the first 60 seconds of this video. They pick up the hammer. Not literally, probably. The croppers smashed the specific machines they could reach because those machines were physical, local, in a building down the road. You can't march to a field at midnight and smash a large language model. It doesn't live in one place. It lives in data centers you'll never see, owned by companies in countries you'll never visit. But the impulse, the thing underneath the hammer that doesn't need a physical target. And it's already surfacing. You can see the early signals if you know where to look. The backlash isn't organized into a movement yet, but the pressure is building in a dozen directions at once. Governments are suddenly, urgently writing rules, real, enforceable AI laws, arriving this year, after a decade of doing nothing. Strikes and contracts in creative industries are now fought explicitly over whether machines can replace human work. There's a rising public hostility to AI-generated content, a growing instinct to punish it, to demand things be labeled human-made the way we once demanded organic. Governments are even beginning to restrict who's allowed to access the most powerful models at all, treating frontier intelligence like a weapon that can't be handed out freely. That's the backlash forming. And here's where history offers not one ending, but two. In the first ending, the one we actually lived, the workers lose the immediate fight. The machines stay. The hammers fail. But the noticing doesn't die. It goes underground, and over the following decades it turns into something more durable than any raid, unions, labor laws, the vote, the weekend, the safety net. The Luddites lost the battle and, in the very long run, their descendants won a fairer share. The pause ended. The boats did, eventually, rise. But that ending was not guaranteed, and it was not free. It was forced. It took a century of organized, sometimes violent pressure to make the owners share the gains. Nothing about it was automatic. The technology didn't distribute its rewards out of kindness. People made it, at enormous cost. Which means the real question of the next 10 years isn't, will AI take the jobs? That's the small question. The real question is the one the Luddites were actually asking under all that soot. When the machines create a mountain of new wealth, who is going to make sure any of it reaches the people whose lives it just rearranged? Because if the answer is no one, if we do what we did the first time, and tell everyone to be patient and grateful while the gap becomes a canyon, then history is fairly clear about what comes next. It doesn't come as a debate. It comes as a reckoning. And it tends to arrive right about the moment the people in charge have convinced themselves it never could. So let's close the loops. I told you the Luddites weren't fools afraid of technology, they were skilled people who noticed, correctly, that the wealth of a new age was flowing past them. I told you there was an invisible mechanism, the way a new technology captures its rewards for the owners first, for years, before ordinary people claw any of it back, and that the mechanism just switched on again in 2026, in the gap between AI's real productivity and the wealth already concentrating around it. And I told you that history has an answer for what people do when that gap gets too wide, and that the answer is already stirring, in the laws, the strikes, the backlash forming around you right now. 200 years ago, they blackened their faces, named their hammers, and walked across a frozen field, because they understood something their whole society was determined not to see. We turned them into a punchline so we wouldn't have to admit they were right.
The machines are here again. Smarter this time. Faster this time. And the only real question, the one that decides whether this century's story ends like the first one eventually did, or somewhere much darker, is whether we notice and whether we're brave enough to say it out loud, before the field freezes over. If this reframed how you see what's happening right now, that's the whole reason this channel exists. To notice the patterns while there's still time to do something about them. Subscribe, because the next one follows this thread straight into what's already happening to the internet itself, Pabdan. And it's stranger than this.